Okay, so here we are. The first of the four keys. Race day is about execution and not fitness. That's the X in the four keys that you see that are displayed everywhere inside the team. And it's really the foundational key. It's really important because this is a framework that we carry with us all season long. And it's one of the key transitional pieces that we make when we move from thinking about training and building fitness to actually executing, right? And putting together a race. And we have to draw that line and we break out the four keys with those 12 weeks to go as our mindset shifts from working out and always making gains, always pushing harder, recovering as we need to, but really challenging ourselves on a daily or weekly or monthly basis to a position where we're saying, what I'm trying to do here is create conditions for success on a single day. So success is actually maybe not doing all the work I need to do right now. I need to prepare myself to have a great race. And so the transition towards thinking about execution, not fitness, actually happens much earlier than the race itself. And it works that way for our most successful athletes. If you are stuck in a mindset of training, but you're there on race day, that is where the friction lies because you're bringing your training mindset to this race. And what happens is, as you start noticing external stimuli, as you start finding resistance from the course, from the terrain, from the conditions, all of that then begins to affect your training mindset, which is, bigger, better, badder, more. Like all of that is just the way that I want to go. And you bring that sort of egocentric attitude to the table and you begin to push back. So as people push on you, you're pushing back. As a race pushes on you, you're pushing back. And the net is that you end up start doing work that's outside your overall goal of performance in the entire event. Remember, as an endurance athlete in an endurance event, any 5-minute segment, 30-minute segment, small little piece is just one part of the puzzle, right? There's 100 mistakes or decisions you can make on a given day. You can get 49 of them wrong. As long as you get 51 of them right, you're in the good. Right? So it's all about that execution mindset that we bring to the table. So when we get to race day, one of the things that we need to have in our back pocket, on our handlebars, in our camelback, tied to our bike, inside ingrained in our head is our execution strategy. So 4 weeks out from the race, we remind you that you should really sit down and write out your race plan. It's something that you would use during your race simulation workouts, which are tests not only of your fitness, but also of your execution strategy. Are these numbers going to work? How do I feel doing these numbers? How do I feel when I'm eating and drinking as I like? How does my equipment feel? Is it working right? Do I feel at home in this execution-centric environment? These are all questions we need to ask ourselves because on race day, it's all about execution. And we develop this mindset over time and we bring it with us to race day precisely because we're going to be surrounded by people who are doing the wrong thing. Right? So your job is to not do what everyone else is doing. Your job is to do what's right for you. What's the next best decision? There's countless examples that I could go through, but an easy one would say, it takes me back to the Boston Marathon several years ago when it was just crazy hot. One of those Aprils that was so hot. Out of the gate, race start 10 a.m. And it was already like 78 degrees and it was going to go up to the low 90s. And everybody knew it. It was all over the news. Everybody's worried about it. In fact, they almost canceled the race. So it's not like anybody who was racing was not aware of the fact that it was going to be insanely hot. Yet, despite that, standing at halfway, which is where my family and I usually stand to cheer, or just past halfway, mile 15, the number of athletes that came through on time for a personal best performance was still roughly the same, except they all looked like they were about to finish the marathon, but they had 11 miles to go, right? And not any 11 miles of the Boston Marathon. They were beat red, exhausted, shattered, shells of themselves. And they were literally, effectively throwing themselves off the side of the volcano into the magma below, sacrificing themselves because they had this performance that they demanded of themselves, and they were inflexible in terms of modifying for a strategy based on execution. On a day like that, it's not so much about your total time or that training egocentric version. It's about your total performance. How well can you do relative to everyone else? If it's a really windy day, it's not going to be about the number on the clock at the end of the day. It's going to be about how well you perform against your own fitness expectations, but also against the general population in terms of how they execute. So when you show up on race day and you bring that training mindset, I'm going to ride this speed, I'm going to run this effort, I'm going to be here at this time, working like clockwork, you're really not respecting the race for what it is, which is a dynamic environment within which you bring many tools to bear that determine your successful outcome, one of which is your fitness, but a huge part of it is actually the mental side of your game and the execution. As a reminder, we start that execution process 4 weeks out, drafting a race plan, submitting it to your teammates for feedback inside the community space, incorporating that feedback, making more edits and changes, bringing it to the race, memorizing it in the days leading up to the race, preparing to execute it on the day. If you do it right, by the time you get to the race, you've kind of thought through not only what your goal scenario is in terms of execution, but you've also been able to do some troubleshooting as well. So you're prepared for the odd mistake that could happen, losing some nutrition, running out of fluids, forgetting a piece of gear, getting off course, all those elements that can happen to any of us at any time in any race. Hopefully you've thought through those processes in terms of how you can handle things. My watch battery dies, right? My shoe falls apart. I break a shoelace, all the small things that are seemingly insignificant, but on race day can really get inside your head. All of that can be solved with a proper race plan and focusing on execution early. Execution, not fitness, is not only a mantra that we use in this training buildup, but we also use it specifically on the day itself when people around us are going in opposite directions from the way that we think we need to be going. Your North Star on race day is really your internal compass that you've been building over time, your understanding of where you want to go. And we make decisions based off of that level of confidence that we've developed and not just what everyone else is doing. There's times when it makes sense to follow what everyone else is doing. If there's a car stopped on the side of the road, everyone kind of goes around it. But there's times when it really helps to be a critical, focused participant that's not simply swayed by what everyone else is doing. And that really happens when we get into the race environment. Remember, you've been training on your own for so long or in small groups that getting to a race environment can be a lot of overstimulation. And it's easy to fall into the trap of just doing what others do. You've trained too long for this to get to you, right? So we want to be really focused. So remember, race day is about execution, not fitness. We developed that race execution plan early with the help of your teammates. We put it into practice. We rehearsed it over the week leading into the race. And on race day, it becomes our blueprint, our guiding light against which we make decisions to be successful so that by the end of the race, we're in a position to do what we want to do because we've managed ourselves accordingly across the course. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back with that second key in just a second.